forecast update for the Sioux Falls area. Mostly sunny skies today with a high of 74. A southeast wind at 10 to 15.
Good morning, my friend. Welcome. Great to have you along. We're just getting ready to get underway. So, the devastation of this hurricane and what's happening. Just a lot of crazy things involving that hurricane. That's really the big story this morning. So let's get underway.
The Doctor of Discernment is on the air.
I love the Greg Belfrage show.
I've been listening to you for years, Greg. Thanks for all you do and keeping us informed.
You sound a little taller on radio.
Dispensing a daily dose of common sense. No prescription required.
Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. Americans play to win all the time. I don't believe in the no-win scenario.
Good morning, my friend. The marketplace of ideas is open. It is great to have you along. Welcome to the Greg Belfrage Show on this Friday morning. What we're seeing in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene is just absolutely devastating. Rescue crews, volunteers facing obstacles at every turn, says the Associated Press. It's now been a week since the storm, moved into Florida. And the search continues for people who have yet to be heard from. And the death toll, of course, continues to climb. What is it, 215, I think, is one of the latest numbers that I had seen yesterday afternoon. So likely will rise even beyond that. But again, the death toll at 215 yesterday as more victims were found. So this is making Helene the deadliest hurricane to hit the U.S. mainland since Katrina in 2005. And roughly half the victims were in North Carolina, dozens more killed in South Carolina and Georgia. And you've got a number of states, 5 states that really have been affected by this. And it's quite incredible. We're beginning to hear some of the stories. NBC News had a story about a woman named Vicki Hunter, and they say she couldn't make sense of the giant trees rushing toward the front porch of her one-story home. She watched them as the floodwaters were raging across her pasture, began to inundate the property. She yelled to her husband to get dressed in case they needed to evacuate. By the time he did, their cars were flooded, so they had nowhere to go. Rescue crews and boats tried to reach the house, but couldn't get to them. And Vicki said, 1 minute I'm baking cookies, in the next I'm fighting for my life, and my whole life has been turned upside down. Can you imagine that? How fast that. So her husband had been on the back porch when the foundation gave way. Suddenly the house was floating. She learned from rescuers that her husband had jumped into the floodwaters at some point. And when they asked her about whether her husband could swim, she said, about as good as he can dance. He went in and never came up. These are the kinds of stories that are out there and that we're hearing. She said, he was my soulmate. I just loved him so much. I want him here. I want him to be with me. Really says something about the devastation. There's another story about a couple that were found hugging each other after a fallen tree had killed them as a result of the hurricane. You had the winds, hurricane winds blowing and branches snapping. So John Savage says he went to his grandparents' bedroom just to make sure they were okay. We heard one snap, and I remember going back there and checking on them. They were both fine. The dog was fine, but not long after that, Savage and his father heard a boom. It was the sound of one of the biggest trees on the property. This is in South Carolina, crashing on top of his grandparents' bedroom and unfortunately killing them both. He said all you could see was ceiling and tree. I was just going through sheer panic at that point. He said his grandparents were found hugging one another in the bed, and the family thinks it was God's plan to take them together rather than one suffer without the other. These are just heartbreaking stories. So meanwhile, as we talk about rescue efforts, there are a lot of things that are going on. You've got volunteer pilots who are trying to fly supplies to those who are trapped. Let's talk about Sean Carroll. He is a member of Operation Airdrop. It's a relief organization, and it enlists pilots with private planes and helicopters to deliver supplies to people that are stranded in isolated areas, in the midst of disasters like this one. And so this is a story from NBC. They said over the course of 2 days, 350 supply flights by fixed wing planes have taken off from the airport at, this is in Concord. Another 215 supply flights using helicopters also took off. And the amount of supplies that have been donated, the number of pilots who have shown up with their own planes at their own expense. And Carol says it's just been amazing. Some of the pilots have been flying in with their planes already packed with supplies, he said. One of the pilots is a 60-year-old man named Gerald Herbert. He said his plane was packed to the gills. It was already packed when he landed at Concord. He said, I bought everything from baby wipes to underwear to Pop-Tarts to animal crackers for the kids. I also got flushable Sandy wipes, $120 worth of Band-Aids, Benadryl, Advil, you name it, he said. This is the spirit of Americans. That Americans, when tragedies like this occur, this is the way some Americans respond. It really is absolutely incredible to witness this. And so Gerald Herbert said, I've covered at least 20 hurricanes in the last 10 years. I just gotten home, was planning to use this window of time to take a bike trip on the Blue Ridge Parkway. Then this happened, he said. So as he was watching the reports of devastation coming from North Carolina, he says he knew he needed to do something. He said, the region is dear to my heart, especially Blowing Rock, where he and his wife had been thinking about retiring. And he said, when I saw how much damage the storm was doing up here, I just couldn't sit still. I have a plane, I have the time, I have a credit card. I had to do something, he says. Pretty incredible stories. And these guys are making multiple runs a day. He said, I expect to make 2 to 3 runs today. And these stories just go on. It's of these, again, this is a story from NBC about these volunteer pilots flying supplies. So it's just absolutely incredible, the response that we're seeing from average Americans who are reacting to this, the devastation that we're seeing. So President Biden visited Florida and Georgia yesterday to survey the damage from the hurricane, getting updates on the federal response to as well as state and local response to the storm. And he said that Congress has an obligation to make sure that these states have the resources they need. So he took an aerial tour of Florida's Big Bend, And he said the work to rebuild will cost billions of dollars. He said Congress has an obligation, it seems to me, to ensure that states have the resources they need. Both so he's saying Congress has got to be able to make sure that the states have what they need, that they do something. The trip was the president's second consecutive day then viewing hurricane damage, because he arrived on Wednesday and to survey flood damage. He announced the federal government will cover 100% of all debris removal and emergency protective measures in North Carolina for 6 months. We'll do the same for Florida and Georgia for the next 90 days. And then he talked to state and local officials, in particular, members of Congress who represent these states. So he visited with Senator Rick Scott of Florida, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. And he said there are no Republicans or Democrats in this crisis, only Americans. In moments like this, it's time to put politics aside. He said there are no Democrats or Republicans out here. And he said the residents have been through hell. That's just is going to remain a big story, I think, for some period of time. It's just absolutely incredible. One of the other big stories this morning is the International Longshoremen's Association ended their strike temporarily. So they are extending this now until January 15th so that they have time for further negotiations. So the end of the strike was confirmed. And again, this will be extended now until January 15th. So they will be able to continue for the next few months and continue to negotiate in the meantime. So it certainly looks like progress is being made. But if it had continued, the strike could have threatened to raise prices on a number of items, things like, seafood, bananas, toys, cars, chocolate, alcohol, number of different products. So the strike is over disagreements in pay as well as automation. And the Donald Trump reacting to it, saying American workers should be able to negotiate for better wages, especially since the shipping companies are mostly foreign flag vessels, including the largest consortium, one, he said. So that's good news that the port strike then ending, at least temporarily, sounds like, until January. Also, Donald Trump, during a rally in Michigan yesterday, expressed frustration with FEMA and their lack of funds. That's what he's concerned about. He's not denigrating FEMA. He's concerned with their lack of funds. And he said, can you imagine another 4 years like what we've lived the last 4, Trump said. People are dying in North Carolina. They're dying all over those 5 or 6 states. They're dying. They're getting no help from our federal government because they have no money. Their money's been spent on people that should not be in our country. If lying Kamala gets 4 more years instead of a golden age, America will instead be plunged into a dark age. Your family finances will be permanently destroyed. Your borders will be gone forever, Trump says. Elon Musk is planning to attend Donald Trump's rally coming up this weekend, October 5th in Butler, Pennsylvania. So the rally's coming up tomorrow then. And Elon Musk is going to be there. And the campaign said in a release, President Trump's return to Butler will mark his first visit to the site of the attack since he was, shot on July 13th, but was saved in what the world has recognized as an act of divine providence. And so, and this goes on. They're talking about Trump and his the American spirit and what happened on that day. But Elon Musk will be there as well. He will be attending that rally. Also, the president said yesterday he did not believe there's going to be an all-out war in the Middle East. He said, this is a story from Newsmax. President said that such a war could be avoided, but more needs to be done in order to ensure that. So he was asked, how confident is he that war could be averted? He said, how confident are you it's not going to rain? Look, I don't believe there's going to be an all-out war. I think we can avoid it, but there is a lot to do yet, he said. So he was then asked if he would send American troops to help Israel. And he said, we have already helped Israel. We are going to protect Israel, he says. So there are a lot of tensions between Iran and Israel, and there are several stories that are trending that I'll share with you coming up here in a few minutes as we get into trending stories this morning about what's going on over there. But tensions are pretty high. Also, there's a, speaking of Israel, while we're talking about it, Israel has targeted a man they believe to be the successor to Hezbollah, the leadership, because they've killed the leader of Hezbollah. And so they apparently now launched an attack against the head of Hezbollah's executive committee. There are reports, Axios has got a story on this morning. So the strike took place in a suburb south of Beirut, where many Hezbollah compounds are located. And according to Lebanese press reports, the Israeli strike was far larger than one that had killed the leader the previous week. Also, Garth Brooks, country music star, has been accused of sexual assault and battery in a lawsuit from a Jane Roe, it's got to be a Jane Doe, I would imagine, who says she worked as a hairstylist and makeup artist. And Brooks, responding to this in a statement, said, for the last 2 months, I've been hassled to no end with threats, lies, and tragic tales of what my future would be if I did not write a check for many millions of dollars. Hush money, no matter how much or how little, is still hush money. In my mind, that means I'm admitting to behavior I am incapable of, ugly acts no human should ever do to another. We filed suit against this person nearly a month ago to speak out against extortion and defamation of character. We filed it anonymously for the sake of families on both sides. So this was part of a statement that Garth Brooks, responding to this these claims of sexual assault and battery being brought. So I guess it is a lawsuit from Jane Roe. The CNN also, it was CNN who had broken this story. And the details and the complaints go on. The largest I think the newest part of that is Garth Brooks responding to this and saying it's, this is a hush money payment, and he's clearly is refusing. But that's a big story this morning. Also, this is a little bit shocking. Vice President Kamala Harris, I know you've heard this on some of the other shows, understandably so. Kamala Harris announcing $750 in aid for Hurricane Helene victims. And there's a lot of pushback. First of all, $750 in the wake of this incredible devastation we see. And this happened just days after she and President Biden's administration announced $8 billion in a new installment of aid for Ukraine. So the amount of aid that's being sent to Ukraine versus what we see happening for these victims of the hurricane is just jaw-dropping. And there are other stories about the federal government and not allowing, certain things. Pete Buttigieg, transportation secretary, talking about drones and telling people, do not get your drones up, do not be in our way. And that is really torquing people off. So there is a lot of anger surrounding all of those things this morning. And that's a look at the big stories this morning. Thanks so much for starting your day with the Greg Belfrage Show. 627, clear skies, and 37. And this hour of our show brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month.
It's 5 to 8. Kello News Talk 1320.
Oh, it feels like a Friday.
See the in-store details on how to get rebates from major tire manufacturers. 2 Sioux Falls locations to serve you.
Okay, coming up, we'll run down stories that are trending this morning.
Optimizing a beautiful view and lighting the bedroom, kitchen, or living room from ABC Seamless of Sioux Falls. Call 605-646-2667 today.
ABC Seamless. On a quest for a tasty bite to eat, enjoy Safari Bar and Grill's ribeye steak dinner.
This story about these two grandparents found hugging each other and a tree falling on them both and taking their lives. Wow.
Farmers and builders, listen up. Purple Wave Auction is shaking up equipment sales.
This is why if you are inclined, to help folks, I have been sharing, for those of you who follow me on Facebook, the Trump campaign had set up. There's a lot of concerns about, you got scammers who are trying to take advantage and things like this. So these fundraising efforts that come up. So you want to make sure that if you're giving money to people who need it right now in the midst of all of this, Donald Trump had set up, and the Trump campaign, I should say, had set up a GoFundMe for victims of the hurricane. And man, the amount of money that it's has brought in has been pretty phenomenal. So on my Facebook page, you'll find a link to that. I plan on giving. I haven't yet, but today's payday, so I plan on giving. This is just devastating to see what's going on. All right.
After a chilly start, a mild afternoon. Our high today 74, mostly sunny skies, southeast winds at 10 to 15. Tonight, not as cold, low temperature 55, a stronger south breeze. And then tomorrow, a lot of wind from the south during the morning, switching to the northwest. Fire weather watch, high of 84.
And in Sioux Falls at 6:30, clear skies, 37 currently at Kello, Joe Bowman is in the Kello.com News Center. Coming up, a 21-year-old man facing first-degree robbery and aggravated assault charges in an armed robbery earlier this week. Joe will have details on that story and more for you in moments here on Kello.
Friday for 45,000 longshoremen and the truckers who are shut down in the 3-day dock workers strike along the eastern Gulf Coast ports. It's over for 90 days to negotiate.
We're working hard on it, and we're just grace of God, the good old neighbor is going to hold.
Former President Trump in Georgia today on his second Hurricane Helene relief visit with Governor Brian Kemp. FEMA has just arrived to the immense suffering in North Carolina. Trump tells Fox.
They've given over $1 billion to illegal migrants that came in, and now they have no money for North Carolina, for Georgia, for South Carolina, and Alabama, Tennessee, and Florida. I think that's a disgrace.
Candidate Kamala Harris campaigns in Flint, Michigan. The International Association of Firefighters declines to endorse either candidate this year after backing Joe Biden last time. America is listening to Fox News.
Kello News Time, 6:31. I'm Joe Bowman in the Kello.com News Center. A 21-year-old man is facing first-degree robbery and aggravated assault charges for an armed robbery earlier this week. Police Information Officer Sam Clemens says a woman was waiting for a friend in her car when she was confronted by a man with a gun.
While she was seated there was a guy that came up, pointed a gun at her, basically ended up getting her keys, her cell phone, which he broke, and then her wallet that had personal documents in it, as well as some cash.
Neighborhood surveillance video led to the arrest of Adam Ismail. Police found several of the missing personal documents in his car. More child pornography charges have been added against a former Sioux Falls middle school teacher. The U.S. Attorney's Office has brought 20 additional counts against Justin Preschel, bringing the total to 36. After a charge of solicitation of a minor was dropped in July, Preschel was indicted on 16 counts of child porn dating back to June last year. An investigation now alleges his illicit activity goes as far back as December of 2022. Preschel was a teacher at Whittier Middle School. The lockdown at the South Dakota State Penitentiary is now over. According to the Department of Corrections, the nearly 3-week lockdown was a proactive security measure which included searches for dangerous contraband and illicit substances. The DOC says it was not in response to any assault or disturbance. Dakota State University is receiving a $1 million grant for cybersecurity research. The U.S. Small Business Administration is providing the grant to the university's Paulson Cyber and Economic Development Center. The funds will be used to help businesses in South Dakota protect themselves from cyber threats and attacks. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month in South Dakota, as declared by Governor Noem. And in college football, tomorrow the Coyotes travel to Kentucky to take on Murray State. Kickoff is at 2. And the Jackrabbits, after having last Saturday off, open conference play against number 18 Northern Iowa. Kickoff is at 4. From the Kello.com News Center, I'm Joe Bowman.
The news never stops. Kello News Talk 1320 107.9.
News brought to you by Sioux Falls Implant and Sedation Dentistry. They fix your teeth while you sleep.
Here's your forecast update for the Sioux Falls area. Mostly sunny skies today with a high of 74. A southeast wind at 10 to 15. For tonight, not as chilly. Low temperature at 55 with a stronger breeze from the south. A fire weather watch in effect for your Saturday, high of 84. Stronger winds. From the Storm Center at Kettleland TV, I'm Brian Karstens.
Focusing on news you can use. News that affects you. Kello News Talk 1320 107.9.
Today, why I never ride in a Waymo self-driving car, and why you shouldn't either. I'm Kim Commando for LinkedIn Jobs. Post a job for free and find qualified candidates quickly at linkedin.com/Kim. Waymo is the self-driving taxi owned by Google's parent company, Alphabet. It's only operating in LA, San Francisco, Phoenix, and Austin, at least for now. Of course, Waymo isn't profitable, but Alphabet believes the way forward is to put more cars in more cities. If you visit one of the 4 cities where Waymo is operating, here's my advice. Don't get in, even for the novelty. Instead, check out the video of a San Francisco woman in a Waymo last weekend. 2 men simply walked out on the street in front of the Waymo car, which is programmed to stop. It did. Her doors were locked. She could not open them. She was trapped. The 2 men demanded her phone number. They could have just as easily had guns or rocks to break the windows. Waymo is dangerous, and it's not ready for prime time. Enter to win a brand new iPhone 16 Pro at winfromkim.com. When hiring for a small business, you want quality professionals who are right for the role and your team. That's why I use LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to find the right people for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just another job board. You get access to LinkedIn's vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, many of whom you won't find anywhere else. That's why it's simply the best place to hire. LinkedIn does all that while making the process simple and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. In fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that as a small business, you might not have the time or resources to spend on hiring. That's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make it simpler, like the new feature to help write job descriptions. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Kim. That's linkedin.com/Kim to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. That's linkedin.com/Kim.
The Kim Commando Show, live Saturday mornings at 9. Kello News Talk 1320 107.9.
The Kello Hotline is brought to you by Tires, your Give You More tire and automotive store. Financing programs available, 2 Sioux Falls locations to serve you.
Stop putting it off year after year. As part of your winter prep this year, you should consider an electric backup generator for your home. Call D&D Electric today to discuss your generator options and get a quote. D&D Electric, we provide the power. How you use it is up to you.
Grain Insight is an algorithm-based managed bushel service to help farmers level the playing field. Grain Insight was designed at managing risk to take the emotion out of grain marketing. Text GRAIN at 605-291-1020 for more information. Trading futures and options involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors or producers.
Getting quality employees to fill positions in your company is essential, but finding those people can be a major hassle unless you use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes finding quality people a breeze. ZipRecruiter's advanced technology identifies candidates with the right skills, sends you great matches, then you can easily invite them to apply. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See for yourself. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/free to try ZipRecruiter for free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. As the leader in identity theft protection, LifeLock reminds you to update your passwords. Using the same password across multiple accounts makes you...
Great thing about drinking that decaffeinated coffee. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh yeah, man, I need the caffeine. And then and it helps, even though it's decaffeinated. I can't explain why.
Okay, some mornings you might not have that get up and go.
But at least you get up and go.
The Greg Belfrage Show with insightful opinions.
.638, clear skies, and 37 currently at Kello. Good morning, my friend, and welcome to the Greg Belfrage Show. This hour brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month.
Trending now.
Add them on Facebook.
Let the tweeting begin. The hashtag does that. News and views from Belf's News Gallery.
Well, the top trending story this morning continues to be Hurricane Helene, as crews now are trying to reach folks. We've got the death toll up to around 215, I think was the latest as of yesterday afternoon. 215 dead in multiple states, most in North Carolina, but a number of other states being impacted by this, 4 or 5 states totally. It's just an incredibly devastating storm. So crews now are rescue crews, volunteers, running into a lot of obstacles, says the Associated Press. And they have paddled canoes across swollen rivers, steered horses past mudslides, trying to reach those that might be stranded or missing. So the search continues. How many people are missing? or unaccounted for isn't clear. You know, part of it is you just don't have the communications as a result of the storm. You have water and power outages obviously persisting, and some just really heartbreaking stories. It's a story about a grandparents that were found hugging each other after a fallen tree had killed them. And they were lying in bed, and the family heard a boom. And it was one of the biggest trees on their property crashing on top of the house, striking his grandparents' bedroom and killing them both. And he says, all you could see was ceiling and tree. I was just going through sheer panic at that point, which I think any of us would. That's just heartbreaking to even share with you. Also, the International Longshoremen's Association has announced the end of its strike. So they're ending the strike. The contract had expired last week. It's now being extended until January 15th. So they're negotiating again. So I don't know. It's that the end of the strike. We'll see. We'll see what happens coming January 15th as to whether or not that's actually. But at least for now, the strike has ended until January 15th, and we'll see what happens at that point. And again, they're saying that negotiations will continue through the midst of that. Also, there is a story trending as we talk about the hurricane about Franklin Graham and Samaritan's Purse. Franklin Graham, of course, the head of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. Franklin Graham was in Valdosta, Georgia on Monday, and he spent some time with Donald Trump. He's been a supporter of Donald Trump's. Franklin Graham has. And as I keep looking at photos, it's wild how much he looks like his father, Billy Graham. Franklin Graham does. But Franklin Graham has been, again, he's the CEO of both Samaritan's Purse and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. But Samaritan's Purse is responding in the states of Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee. And this was on Monday. He said, this building behind us represents hundreds of thousands of people that have lost homes, businesses, friends, loved ones, he said. And he said, it's going to take an army of volunteers and people to respond. And at Samaritan's Purse, we want to always respond in Jesus' name. We want people to know that God loves them, that God cares for them. Sometimes when a storm like this comes, people think, well, maybe God is mad at us. Maybe this is his judgment. No, God loves us. How do I know that? Because the Bible tells us that God loves us and cares for us. He says, yes, there are storms in life, but God will take us through those storms if we put our faith and trust in his Son, Jesus Christ. It's just incredible. I had an opportunity to talk to Franklin Graham a number of years ago. That he was on the show, actually. He was on my old afternoon show, I think. It's been quite a number of years ago that I had an opportunity. He was here in Sioux Falls and had a chance to talk to him. And he's just an incredible person. Absolutely incredible in the work that he's doing. He's just absolutely inspiring. Other stories trending this morning. Liz Cheney's out there campaigning with Kamala Harris. And this story is trending. She is rejecting, calling on people to reject Trump's cruelty. And Cheney said, I know that the most conservative of conservative values is fidelity to our Constitution. Now, if you believe that, how can you support Kamala Harris? I mean, if you truly believe that, if you really think that's true, how can you support Kamala Harris? You can't. You just can't. I hate, again, if that story were not trending, we would not even be talking about it. I just think that is in the midst of the devastation of the hurricane and the incredible stories of what people are doing to try to help their fellow Americans who have been impacted by this storm. That story to me is, who cares? I mean, seriously. But it's trending, so I share it. Also, we're seeing how many people watched the debate this week between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. It brought in 43 million viewers. So 43 million who watched the debate earlier this week. The largest audience in a vice presidential debate occurred in 2008, when 70 million people watched the matchup between Joe Biden and Sarah Palin. Also trending this morning, former First Lady Melania Trump is her new book is coming out, I think, next week. And it's her upcoming memoir, Melania. And she, in the book, apparently defends abortion rights. She writes in her memoir that women must be guaranteed autonomy in deciding their preference of having children based on their own convictions, free from any intervention or pressure from the government. Apparently, this is what and I think this is true of couples that are married. You have disagreements, and that's where her views sounding much different from those of her husband, Donald Trump. But how many of us, I think, would be the same thing? How many of us and our significant other have, perhaps some very serious differences of opinion, all transcended by love, though. So, also, prosecutors have requested an indefinite delay in the trial for Ryan Routh. And this, I saw this story yesterday, actually. So federal prosecutors now requesting an indefinite delay on Wednesday in scheduling the trial for Ryan Routh. This is the most recent would-be assassin trying to kill Donald Trump. And in a filing on Wednesday, prosecutors asked the judge to officially designate Routh's case as complex, which would give them more time. This is not good news. Heating costs are set to rise this winter. A new report from the National Energy Assistance Directors Association estimates home heating expenses in the U.S. will increase 10.5% this winter over last year. So that will bring the average seasonal bill up to $982, and that would be up from nearly $100 from last year. And reports, this is a report from Fortune.com. The good news, that's not nearly as bad a jump as it was in 2021 or 2022. High maintenance costs and upgrades on the grid are the reasons for the jump. Western states have been particularly impacted by this due to fires. Prices there could jump over 20% this winter, they say. Still, every form of heater will see some increase. Propane up, and this going oil heating up as well. Also trending this morning, state of Israel and the Jewish world ringing in the Jewish New Year this week. Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, is actually on, I think on Wednesday. That story's still trending. Also, the Israeli government confirmed a targeted aerial attack in the early morning hours yesterday on a Hezbollah affiliated site in central Beirut. And it was one of the largest explosions that we have seen in the midst of this war in the Middle East. It was pretty incredible. So Hezbollah has co-opted much of the Lebanese government, launched a major terrorist campaign against northern Israel then, and reports from the region saying there's panic in Lebanon. We are on the precipice of disaster. One-armed soldier who was standing watch in a neighborhood in East Beirut said, "No one knows what's going to happen next in Lebanon. My advice is to leave now," he's telling people. So Israeli troops had amassed at the border, and they walked into Lebanese territory, marking the first invasion then since 2006. Israel Defense Forces said that with the support of airstrikes and artillery fire, ground operation will target villages near the Lebanese border. Also trending this morning, 3 former Memphis police officers convicted by a federal jury on lesser charges connected to the beating death of Tyree Nichols. And the verdict was delivered yesterday, found the officers guilty of witness tampering and one on an additional count of conspiracy to witness tamper. And so a federal jury convicting these 3 former Memphis police officers on these charges. They were found guilty of witness tampering, conspiracy to witness tamper, but not guilty of more serious civil rights violations. But a state murder trial still waits for them. Also, a former Colorado County clerk has been sentenced to 9 years behind bars. This is former Colorado County clerk Tina Peters, sentenced to 9 years for leading a voting system data breach scheme that was inspired by claims that fraud had altered the 2020 presidential outcome. And the judge handed down the sentence after jurors found Tina Peters guilty in August for allowing a man to misuse a security card. And the man was affiliated with the chief of MyPillow and Mike Lindell. So Lindell's name is being dragged through the midst of this. These are all the actions of others, not his own. Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman, in other words, the husband of Kamala Harris, denying allegations yesterday that he had forcefully slapped his then girlfriend for flirting with another man. He said this report is untrue, and any suggestion that he would or has ever hit a woman is false, according to his spokesperson. Also, a Florida law banning homeless people from sleeping in public spaces took effect this week. It's one of the strictest anti-homeless statutes in the country. So under the law, municipalities are required to create designated spaces for camping and sleeping if homeless shelters are full. And the spaces need to have access to clean and operable restrooms and running water. So it's among the first of its kind laws going into effect. There's a new report out that's showing broken power lines are responsible for the deadly wildfire that we saw in Maui. A report has found that broken power lines caused the fire. You'll remember that killed 102 people. It was absolutely devastating at the time, destroyed more than 2,200 structures, caused more than $5 billion in damages. So this was a 300-page report released this week from the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. So again, it was broken power lines that caused the fire, they're saying. Also, there was a huge solar flare this week that caused a radio blackout on Earth on Wednesday. So the event on Wednesday saw a huge amount of electromagnetic radiation being, coming from the sun, being thrown toward the Earth. So communications were only briefly lost, but that's a story that's been trending this week. And then finally, America's on alert for another major superstorm as Hurricane Kirk is picking up steam. And that's a look at the stories trending this morning in Belf's News Gallery. Thanks so much for starting your day with the Greg Belfrage Show. I appreciate it. 6:57. Clear and 37 in this hour of our show, brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month.
To listen and listen to learn. Kello News Talk.
Well, thank you so much, my friend, for joining me on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. I hope you'll hit the like button. And I also hope you'll come back for the fourth hour of the Greg Belfrage Show at 9:30 this morning. So hope to see you then. Take care.